Good evening to you all, and welcome to your punctibyte for the week of September 10th. I hope you've all had an amazing weekend. It's been both good and bad for me. Today I did a phenomenal triathlon and even managed to win in Fort Collins. It was wicked fun. But also after struggling through an 8.5-hour surgery on her colon, my grandmother began struggling and has been taken into hospice and is dying. So I also traveled to Denver to say goodbye to my grandma. So it's been a hard day in that respect, and I thought I should just let you all know in case I continue to struggle a little bit this week. I'm going to go ahead and kick things off for the punctibyte today by reminding you about our new and exciting piece of technology for the class, and that is Twitter. And I think most of you got a little bit of this on the first day when I mentioned it to the students, but I wanted to introduce you to the Twitter feed, which is basically if you just type in the virtual edge all in lowercase letters, but don't forget the virtual edge all in lowercase, that is going to be the Twitter feed where I retweet some of what you see here. And so articles that are ranging from philosophy versus science all the way to our synthetic bacterial communities will be, some things that I might just retweet. So it's kind of fun, and I found this to be already a really valuable technology for helping them with current events projects. It's really a great way for us to keep up with things as well. And I think for you guys, it would be a really, really wonderful tool to allow you to make connections from your lecture with current events. It just inspires a better lecture if you have something to relate it to sometimes. Not all the time necessarily, but occasionally this may be a really, really useful tool for you. Let's go ahead and take a look at the schedule for this week. And the labs that we'll be doing, labs 3 and 4, and I'll go through some TA guidelines in a minute here, but I did want to draw your attention to the fact that this will be the first week where you'll all be giving lectures. And I know I know Erin gave a lecture last week, but for the most part I was lecturing throughout the week, and this week that'll be different. Now I am signed up occasionally for lectures, but I'm not signed up all day. So make sure that you've chosen somebody to give those lectures and that you're thinking ahead about signing up for some of the lectures that are to come. Bo, Elia, and Mara, you're additionally going to be covering Open Lab this Friday. So again, either finding someone to cover for you or being around for Open Lab. Okay, great. There's a couple of other upcoming events that I want to draw your attention to, and a couple of what I'll call opportunities for improvement, maybe. Our first lecture exam is on the 18th. So on that day, students will be taking the exam all day long. And so I have 2 graders. I am looking for an additional grader if anyone is interested. It's not essential, but I do pay a little for that, and it may be something that would interest you just for, maybe you need a little cash to take somebody out on a hot date or something, and you'd like to help me out with grading a little bit, and that would be more than welcome. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing that is maybe an opportunity for improvement or of interest to someone, I did mention this on Thursday, is we have one student, Danny, who is not going to be able to be in labs, and so I'm looking for somebody who might be interested in working with her once a week, helping her through Virtual Edge. It might be that that person is me, and that's okay too, so if you are interested, let me know. If you're not, that's fine as well. So I think that's most of what I had to say, except for that I did want to draw your attention to the fact that you'll be writing your first full pre-lab for Lab 5. What that means is that pre-lab needs to be written by the 13th during Lab 4, because you'll set it to open, and in fact it's already set to open for that day, so you'll want to make sure there's content in it because it will open, and if it opens and it doesn't have content, your students will probably madly and frantically be emailing you and letting you know that there are no questions in there. But let's take just a minute to review what you'll want to do once you are logged into eCompanion, and adding questions, how that will work. So this is Marielle and Callie's pre-lab that I have here. And we'll say that they want to add a true-false question. So they would just click on New True-False Question and Add. And then you go ahead and write your question. So, Marielle and Callie are the most phenomenal TAs and then, true or false, and you mark true, right? And then you put your points. Remember that each question is worth 5 points. And then you simply run down and hit add. And that'll allow you to add a question. Remember, we're looking for 5 questions, each valued at 5 points. So that'll be something you'll want to think about having ready to go and open on Thursday. So that's I guess just something to put onto your schedule, if you will. I think that's it for scheduling, and we'll go ahead and jump into the TA guidelines and talk a little bit about the guidelines for labs 3 and 4, and just take a minute to look at some of the highlights there. In terms of lab 3, please do emphasize the importance of the gram stain report, and we'll want to make sure to assign that report. And I have made some changes, and I know many of you were there for the first TA meeting, and you saw those changes that I made to the gram stain report. But particularly if you weren't there, it'd be a good idea to read through that assignment description. Actually, it would probably be a good idea to read through that assignment description regardless, just to make sure that you're understanding that which you're assigning and you know what the students are expected to do there. And of course, that also doubles as your grading key, so it's a great idea to be familiar with what you're looking for and what we're wanting from them there. It is maybe the first time that the students will start to think about including citations in their reports, and they may or may not have citations for this one, but if they do need to think about that. And you might want to guide them to, on the website, on the lecture website, there's a link to a citations guideline that just gives general suggestions for how to cite and when to cite, and they may find that very valuable and useful. There's some good background information on the gram stain on this TA guideline, and you should know that depending upon how far I get in lecture tomorrow, I may not cover the gram-positive and gram-negative cell walls. So it may very well be that Tuesday will serve as their first exposure to this concept. So take your time and don't assume that they already know the difference between a gram-positive and a gram-negative cell wall. So you'll want to take time to explain what the differences are and highlight things like the presence of teichoic and lipoteichoic acids in gram-positives, the thick peptidoglycan. Likewise, you'll want to highlight the presence of the outer membrane in the gram-negative cell and the lipopolysaccharide and its role. So all those things can be very important. We'll also want to either demo or review the gram stain so that they're remembering how artsy that step is with the ethanol decolorization. And talking to them a little bit about how what we're looking for there is to switch as soon as the runoff is no longer colored so that we don't over-decolorize or under-decolorize in any case. We'll also be doing the acid-fast stain. So remember that that one is, and this is something that really confuses students. They get really confused about trying to find a relationship between the gram stain and the acid-fast stain, like all gram-positives are acid-fast, or they're trying to connect them. And even though the bacteria that we're looking at, the Mycobacterium, is in fact gram-positive, the two stains are very different. They're two totally different stains in which we're trying to tell two totally different things. The gram stain, we're looking for the difference between gram-positive and gram-negative cells, and the acid-fast stain, we're looking for the presence of mycolic acid, the ability to retain that dye even in the presence of acid alcohol. It's awesome to talk about the two bacteria for which this acid-fast stain is most notorious for identifying, and that is Mycobacterium tuberculosis and Mycobacterium leprae. I think a quick note on those is really poignant, and there are some good examples of notes that you might make about each of those diseases on your TA guidelines. So take a minute to look at some of those, and that'll be maybe something you may want to bring up in lab. Now for lab 4, we're going to be doing the endospore and capsule stains, and I should mention that in fact the students will have been exposed to these concepts in lecture. So you can talk to them a little bit about the endospore and the capsule and just the ideas of what they are, what they do. I haven't talked in depth about endospores, I've left that for lab, but on the other hand we have mentioned some about them. So it may be kind of a good thing to go through and quiz them on their knowledge to a certain extent. I'll go ahead and also mention that for the next lab, which is lab 5, there's all the dilution problems, and so it might be a great idea to get them inspired to be ready for lab 5, because it's no easy task to learn dilutions. So maybe get them inspired to do that, and that would be a huge step in the right direction for lab 5. Thank you guys, and thank you for bearing with me tonight and being a little bit tired and a little bit down. And I'll look very much forward to seeing you all on Tuesday.